We've offered training at our SIL. Also, we are our SIL is a polling place that is accessible, obviously. It being a Center for Independent Living, we all need to get in there. Let's see here. I am on a statewide action group, and one of our goals are to make polling places more accessible. And the statewide action group has colleagues from each Center for Independent Living across the state, I believe 18 centers, and there's members from each of them. So every county is covered, and we just finished our first year, and we are moving into our second year of the grant cycle, and we are still working on trying to train and getting the awareness out there about the inaccessibility of the polling places. Also, what I really found helpful was getting a good relationship with your director of elections. Our director of elections has come down to our facility and brought pamphlets of the new machines that will be being used, and once they decide or are making the decisions, she said that she will let us test the new machines in Washington County and see which ones are being most accessible.
So Matthew, has Washington County selected a new system for 2020 yet?
I don't believe they've selected yet.
I think that's right.
They are in the process, but we are hoping that it comes along soon, and we are hoping that she, Melanie, which I strongly believe she will keep her promise and let us see which one is the most accessible for people with disabilities. What was that?
That will be the one that
Right. I hope not.
Okay.
And okay, so as I stated, I am the membership director. We have 210 members at this time. All of the membership forms on there ask if they are registered to vote. We are open Monday through Friday, but Monday through Thursday we have a computer cafe that we recommend and offer anybody to come in who needs help registering to vote.
Fantastic.
So at any time they can come in, 9 to 4, Monday through Thursday, and there's a computer cafe manager that will help people register to vote, or any one of our ILS staff will help people register to vote. Because as you said, that's one of the biggest things. Getting people to register is the starting point on getting them to vote.
Okay. How about a great round of applause for all our panelists? Thank you.
Barber, and if you know it, I'm very sorry.
There's no need to apologize for it.
Thank
Your
you.
stuff is awesome.
Thank you. Well, I'm not here to talk about myself. I'm here to talk about Greg Barrington. In 2016, he was one of the first people to agree to be interviewed for my website. Thank you. I haven't done much since then. But Greg Barrington is the co-founder, along with Alice Wong and Andrew Ploring, of the CryptoVote project. He currently serves as the Director of Development for the Center for Disability Rights. He's an educational consultant and disability rights activist. He has taught in universities and worked in disability rights organizations throughout the United States, England, Poland, and India. It's a long flight. His research has focused primarily on the ways in which our understanding of disabilities have served to shape and limit inclusive education in the United States. He's also extremely kind and incredibly intersectional in his activism. So please give a round of applause to Greg Barrington.
Thank you, Amani. I feel as though I should be introducing her. Meeting Amani is one of the most exciting things for me about coming here. We've known each other for, 4 years now? Online. So this was the first time we got to meet in person. If you don't know her, please seek out her writing. She is one of the most eloquent voices our community has. I had two reactions to finding out that Maria Town was speaking before me. One was to be terrified because you can't follow Maria, she's fantastic. And the other one was sort of relief because I knew at least you would all be getting some substance before me. And so I'm grateful to you for that. Also to the wonderful panelists and other speakers, because that is fantastic. I grew up in Pennsylvania, but I haven't been following as closely all the developments in recent years, and so it was nice to catch up there. I want to preface this with a word about language. It may be unnecessary in this setting, but I tend to do this anyway just to be safe. I primarily use identity-first language. I am a disabled person. Disability is not something I carry with me or can put down. It is a proud, integral part of my identity. I have no issue with people who prefer person-first language, but I do not feel the need for anyone to assert my personhood or my humanity for me. I will be using the phrase CryptoVote. This is the organization or hashtag campaign that I helped start. And I know there are people that find the term crip offensive, but just to put that in a little context, while it has been used against our community historically, there's also been a project over the last 30 or 40 years to reclaim that word. In much the same way the LGBTQ community reclaimed queer, to use it as a term of pride. And that is how in CryptoVote we try and use the term as a proud identity. With that out of the way, I work for the Center for Disability Rights, and I'm a member of ADAPT. But I think I was largely asked here to be here because of my role as one of the founders of CryptoVote. CryptoVote is a nonpartisan campaign to engage both voters and politicians in a productive discussion about disability issues in the United States, with the hope that disability takes on greater prominence within the American political landscape. CryptoVote started because many of us in the disability community were watching the 2016 election unfold and were frustrated that there was no mention of disabled people or any awareness that our community exists. Sadly, 4 years later, we find ourselves in very much the same boat. Candidates are talking about everything but our community. When we started the hashtag, my partners, Alice Wong, who many of you may know from the Disability Visibility Project, and Andrew Pulrang, who runs a wonderful blog called Disability Thinking and has a long history in the independent living movement. And I thought we would organize a few Twitter chats, maybe live tweet the debates. But the disability community had other ideas. People took ownership of it, began using the hashtag 24 hours a day. We immediately began to see people tweeting opinions, questions at candidates, having discussions about issues, sharing news stories. In the last 4 years, we have had 52 Twitter chats that have greatly expanded the discourse around politics and disability. We've discussed Medicare for all, access to the polls, mass incarceration, immigration, and gun violence. What has been striking throughout is the passion, the depth of knowledge, and the experience our community brings to each of these discussions. And I take no shame in plugging this Sunday. If you can, please join us on Twitter for our 53rd Twitter chat on accessibility and the caucus system, guest hosted by Disability Rights Iowa. From day one, Crip the Vote has also highlighted the fact that the experience of disabled Americans is one of intersectional oppression. That being disabled cannot be boiled down to a simplistic notion of ableism. To understand the experience, we must understand how racism, sexism, poverty, and ageism all interact with ableism. I hoped it has helped us undermine a problem my friend Melissa Thompson identified with another hashtag, Disability2White, which pointed out that far too often when we talk about disabled lives, the discussion is focused almost exclusively on white disabled people's experiences. In covering all of this ground, Crip the Vote has become an outlet for many to make their experiences heard and ensure that they are understood beyond our community. There's a hunger in the disability community to be engaged in the political process. We see it in the support for Crip the Vote, for Rev Up, and even the rise of political action committees such as Disability Action for America. Our community is broad, and we have many issues that need to be addressed. We live in an age where the health care that many of us rely on to live is under threat. We now face a government that uses disability to disqualify people from immigrating. Our community's unemployment rate is consistently 2 to 3 times that of non-disabled people's. We are also subjected to higher rates of incarceration and violence. In reality, every issue that has come up in this election to date is a disability issue. What has been missing is any sign that any of the candidates running for office is giving the disability community any consideration as they address these issues. The disability community has long been treated as a political afterthought, useful when it is convenient, but only when it is convenient. When healthcare was under attack, it was ADAPT that came forward to defend us all. For those of you who don't know ADAPT, although I see a couple of adapters in the room, please look them up. For the last 40 years, ADAPT has led the fight for the ADA and independent living and deinstitutionalization, laying in front of buses and crawling up the Capitol steps to force change. During the healthcare fight, it was the images of disabled activists from ADAPT getting dragged out of Mitch McConnell's office that galvanized public opinion against plans to repeal the Affordable Care Act. In what many referred to as the Summer of ADAPT, we saw disabled people in over 30 states hold 3 actions a day for almost 3 months. I don't know any political action like it before or since. I'm very proud to have been a part of it. Since that fight ended, ADAPT has focused largely on the passage of the Disability Integration Act, a bill that would codify our right to live in the community and guarantee that if any insurer, public or private, offers long-term supports and services anywhere, they must also offer them in the community. But rather than saying thank you for saving healthcare by ensuring the rights of disabled Americans to live in the freedom of the community, Congress has said, not yet. We have other priorities. You need to wait. But it's not just national politics where disabled people are treated as an afterthought. Over the last year across the country, we've seen locality after locality in an attempt to demonstrate their concern for the environment pass plastic straw bans, disregarding the fact that plastic straws can be just as vital to someone's ability to access a bar or restaurant as a ramp. The other, and just to highlight this, I mean, I've done some research on this. The plastic straw bans came out of a picture of a sea turtle littered with plastic straws, and they wanted to do something about ocean waste. Well, plastic straws make up 0.03% of all plastic ocean waste. 30% is fishing nets. I have yet to hear one person call for any limitation on commercial fishing to stop this. But this, they can demonstrate their commitment to the environment without doing anything that hurts anyone except disabled people. The unstated assumption is that disabled people should be responsible for our own access, and we should not be considered when these laws are proposed. They tell us to bring our own straws. So given the theme of this symposium, how do we make the rest of the nation understand that we count? In this and every election. Sadly, other than my first suggestion, and it's already been made, none of the recommendations I can make offer quick fixes or are easy. My first suggestion, however, is easy, and it's already been mentioned several times. Register and vote. Contact RevUp, although disappointed to hear we don't have RevUp in Pennsylvania yet. So start one, please. Contact RevUp, contact other orgs, go to the DMV, register online, do what you have to, but register to vote. The more disabled people that vote, the better things will be. People pay attention to voter demographics. I'm kind of embarrassed that I didn't think to mention the census because, again, this is so important to what happens to us in future elections. If you can't get to the polls, vote absentee. And I, like everyone else, would not suggest this is the primary choice. But if you can't get there, and many people can, try and register to get an absentee ballot and vote. And if your polling place is inaccessible, and I really hope those Allegheny numbers are true, I'm not holding my breath over it, but I'm hopeful. Contact a PNA, contact the press, contact someone, let them know, and fight until it's made accessible. But above all, do what you have to vote. My next suggestion is to educate. For too long, the dominant narrative about disability has been framed within the individual. This allows people to ignore the societal oppression we face in virtually every corner of American life. I was at a candidate forum we held at the Center for Disability Rights 2 nights ago, and there was a stark difference between the candidates who had worked with us on policy issues in the past and those who had not. Beside the fact that they didn't use phrases such as wheelchair-bound and special needs, they had learned that the biggest problems disabled people face have not been made by any physical, sensory, or cognitive limitations, but rather by socially or governmentally imposed restrictions. When people begin to see the oppression of disabled people as something more than the natural result of disability, they feel a greater responsibility to do something. So educate. And there is much to educate people about, and many to educate. Go on social media, talk to friends and family, talk to politicians, and don't just speak, write, publish, blog, get your positions out there. I first discovered Imani through her blog, and it's one of those powerful voices that changes the discourse. So share your opinions with the public, with politicians, with anyone you can find. We had one person on Crypt the Vote who took it on themselves to write issue briefings that they sent to all the candidates in their state. Several actually reached out to talk with them about the issues. This is voter citizenry at its best. Get involved, do what you can to educate people about the issues that are important to our community. Engage people in conversations about the things that they were taught to look away from. Help them lean into the discomfort. Teach them to get past notions of pity and guilt that so many of us have no use for. Get them as angry as many of us are. Anger is good, and as my 5-year-old will tell you, there's a lot to be angry about. We have a system that still tells many disabled people that to get the services they need to live their lives, they must be in an institution. We have a system that tells people to call the police when someone is experiencing a mental health crisis, despite the fact that this greatly increases their chance of being killed. We have a special education system that over-identifies students of color and predetermines that many of them will never qualify for higher education by condemning them to diplomas that have virtually no value. If people are angry about these things, they will want to do something. My next suggestion, and this is a difficult one for many, is that we need to be partisan only to the disability community. This is challenging. Our politics have become so polarized that it sometimes seems impossible to see that we have any choice in who to vote for at all. It is not a call, however, to be open to candidates that offend us, but more of a recognition that no party has done particularly well by disabled people. We must demand more for our votes. We must make them engage with our issues. This is not a call for a litmus test, though many of us may have them. It is a call to not let any politician take our votes for granted. We are the largest minority. We may not vote as a bloc, but we are large enough that appealing to a sizable portion of our community can sway an election. Disability issues, when they have had support, have a history of bipartisan support. That means we have the opportunity to work both sides of the aisle. It means we are in a position to force candidates to earn our votes, make them engage with our community. This brings me to my fourth suggestion. It's something that I call the Crypt the Vote Challenge. We started it in the last midterm elections. Seek out politicians at every level, federal, state, and local. Ask them about the disability issues that matter most to you. Get them on the record and share their responses so we can hold them accountable to their answers. If you don't like their answers, either find a new candidate or challenge them, make them rethink. There's such a wealth of knowledge in our community. Let's make the politicians engage with it. We live in a time when it has never been easier to contact people who are running for office. Reach out for them on Twitter or Facebook. Email their offices or campaigns. Go to town halls if you can. Refuse to be ignored. I mentioned the Disability Integration Act earlier. A little known story about the first reintroduction of the bill is that the original House sponsor, Chris Gibson, retired in 2016. And people were looking for a new sponsor in the House. The hope was to find another Republican to keep the bill bipartisan. A good friend of mine from Wisconsin, Marilee Adamski-Smith, got it into her head that she would convince Congressman James Sensenbrenner to introduce the bill. She began following him around the district from town hall to town hall, trying to ask him. Now, I should preface this by saying that Marilee is a wheelchair user who has no arms or legs, and who may be the ultimate personification of Midwestern nice. I don't know if you've met Midwestern nice, but there's a picture of her in the dictionary. At one of these town halls, Sensenbrenner called on her from the podium. As she started to speak, he chastised her to stand up. Needless to say, the audience, who could see Marilee a little better than the congressman, began shouting at him that she couldn't. The congressman was deeply embarrassed and sent his aide over to apologize and asked Marilee if she would be willing to meet with him privately afterwards to discuss the bill. Now, Marilee has probably heard much worse than stand up and could care less about what happened, but she was more than happy to take advantage of the opportunity to speak privately with the congressman. And shortly after that town hall, Jim Sensenbrenner became the introducing sponsor for the Disability Integration Act in the House. And this is what can happen from going out and chasing down your politicians and not taking no for an answer. Because as a community, we've had to fight for every right and any justice we have. Nothing has been given to us freely or easily. If you want to know what your city council candidate is going to do about snow removal or police violence, ask them. If you want to know what a presidential candidate is going to do about the institutional bias or to ensure that disabled people are allowed to immigrate to this country, ask them. Keep asking until you get an answer. Do not let manners or civility stand in your way. If you don't get an answer or you get a non-answer, push back. If we don't force elected officials to answer our questions about the issues that matter to us, we're just guessing that they support our issues, or hoping. I don't know about any of you, but I've yet to meet a politician I trust that much to do the right thing. Maria may have a different answer to that. I don't know. But taking them at a guess is the same as flipping a coin. You may get a good result, you may not. I don't want to take that chance. Ask your politicians where they stand. And then when they're elected, hold them to it. Make them work for you. My final suggestion is run for office. Take jobs with politicians and in government. When Crypt the Vote has done issue surveys with members of the community, the policy suggestion that has consistently been ranked as the highest priority of the disability community has been to get more disabled people working in policy-making positions. You heard from Maria earlier, and Maria's current position at AAPD is important. Disability organizations should be led by disabled people, and AAPD is one of the biggest, most influential organizations there is. But without slighting her current role, I would argue that the value of Maria's previous roles in the Obama White House, the Department of Labor, and the Houston Mayor's Office cannot be overstated. Having disabled people shape policy at every level is vital. We need as many people guiding policy from within as we need activists putting pressure on the system from outside. Without this, many elected officials live and operate in a vacuum where disabled people are either an abstraction or don't exist at all. I was working in Albany in CDR's policy office, and one of the major pieces of legislation we were fighting to stop was a push to legalize assisted suicide in New York. And there's one assembly member on the health committee who for years had steadfastly refused to commit to voting for or against the legislation, but who had indicated that if push came to shove, they were likely to vote for it. Suddenly, about 2 years ago, they began saying they would definitely vote against the bill. It seems the deciding factor was a disabled staffer who pointed out to them that under the definition of terminal illness in the state, which everywhere this has been introduced as a condition which, with or without treatment, would result in the person's death within 6 months, and this person was diabetic, and if they had stopped their treatment within 6 months, they argued they would likely be dead. And the politician suddenly saw the flaw in the way this law was constructed. But if elected, so it's sad that this is what it took, but that's the reality. If elected and government officials don't see us and hear from us as they go about their work, we are not real to them. Our community does not have the financial resources to force our way into the conversation as other communities have managed to do. Although if there are any disabled billionaires in the audience, I am happy to work with you to try and prove us wrong. In the meantime, run for office, get involved in campaigns, go to work in government. If you need help, the National Council on Independent Living has a program designed to help people figure out how to run for office. There's also Emily's List, who's starting to make a concerted effort to increase the number of disabled women who are running. I believe Rev Up has encouraged many people in different states to run. There are also several hiring schemes to help disabled people go into government and civil service jobs. We need people at every level of the policymaking process to contribute, to help shape this process, because without that, we're back to being an afterthought. I believe that, I'm looking back at the speech, the word that I may have used most in this is community. The disability community has been the force that has shaped my life for the better. As a 49-year-old disabled man who can in many circumstances pass as non-disabled, although my wife might argue with that. I spent the first 30 years of my life running from a disabled identity. It was coming into the disability community and learning to see disability as a proud identity that has made all the difference in my life. Without it, I was miserable. It's given me friends and family. It's gotten me arrested 20 times that I'm very proud of. And it has given me hope for the future of this somewhat bleak world. Crypt the Vote has worked because of the power of this community. Whatever Alice, Andrew, and I have done to organize, it is the disability community that has been the real force for change. And I truly believe that it is our strength as a community that will make sure that we count in this and every election going forward. Thank you.
panel of the day, Ron comes back up with moderator Arian Abney, Jean Searle, Alyssa Grisham, and Regis Charlton.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. All right. I am exceptionally excited to be here with you today, and I am equally as excited to hear from our expert panelists who are here. I see a few familiar faces in the audience today, as well as I see a lot of new faces. But for those who do not know me, my name is Arian Abney. I am the Pennsylvania State Director with All Voting is Local, and I have the distinct pleasure and privilege of serving as the moderator for today's panel on voter accessibility and empowering voters with disabilities. My hope for this panel conversation is that our panelists can give you some of their thoughts and ideas on some of the issues that voters with disabilities are facing, as well as some of the solutions, and really talk about ways that you all can engage with some of the impactful work that they're doing, both in Allegheny County and across the state. I have a very simple job here today as the moderator. I have a list of questions that I have for the panelists, and I will try to ask as many of those questions as I possibly can, and keep the flow of the conversation going, and do that all before 4 o'clock, so you guys can get out of here on time. All right, how's that sound? Does that work? Perfect. So we'll get right into it. I will introduce our panelists. We have Mr. Ron Bandis, as many of you have already, he moderated a panel earlier today. He is here representing the League of Women Voters. We also have Jean Searle from Disability Rights Pennsylvania, Alyssa Grisham from Ballots for Patients. Elisa Grishman, my apologies, from Ballots for Patients, and Regis Charlton, yes, got that one right, from Center for Independent Living and Disability Options Networks. So let's get right into it. This question is for all of the panelists. What resources would you say that your organization provides or that you know is available as it relates to voter registration and actually getting people to be participatory in the voting process, with a particular focus on voters with disabilities? I'll start with you, Ron, if you don't mind.
That's fine. Okay, well, being responsible for being behind schedule, I'm going to go fast. So, first and foremost, I don't know if everybody knows of the existence of the permanent absentee ballot application. If you fill out the permanent absentee ballot application, they will automatically send you an absentee ballot in the mail before every election. They'll do this for 4 years. At the end of 4 years, they will automatically send you a filled-in application to renew your permanent absentee ballot status. Also, the absentee ballots will be filled in with everything except the absentee ballot applications will be filled in with everything but your signature. So they tried to make the process as easy as possible. The one thing is, the very first time you apply for permanent absentee ballot status, they will ask for a affidavit from the doctor saying that you either cannot get to the polling place or you cannot operate the voting machine. So permanent absentee ballot application available from the Pennsylvania Department of State. And I'll talk about the website in a moment. Number two is a document I created myself some years ago about how to make complaints about elections in Pennsylvania. And this document, I have only a few of them out on the table, outside the room, but contact me if we need more. This tells you basically who to go to for the various complaints you might have. The Help America Vote Act would be a big one, having to do with, for example, if you are refused a provisional ballot because for whatever reason they don't find you on the rolls and you say, well, I'm still voting, at least provisionally. And also denying voter assistance would be a county complaint. So there's information here on how to do those things, how to file a Help America Vote Act complaint, how to file a county complaint. And finally, attached to the same document, I have a list of helpful organizations, such as the Election Protection Coalition, the Disability Rights Pennsylvania, and the Justice Department of Civil Rights Division. So these are all instructions on how to access all of those things. Then I'm just going to mention two websites, although I have more on this piece of paper. The first is the state website. It is VotesPA, that's with an S, votespa.com, strangely. It's a government site, but it is a .com. It really is a pretty terrific site. Not every page on there is wonderful, and actually I found the disability page a little lacking, but there is a lot of good information about lots of other aspects of voting, and I will talk to them about what they can do to improve that page a little bit more. And secondly, since I'm representing the League of Women Voters today, I would be remiss if I did not mention vote411.org. This can be used to find information on candidates. The League does not write anything themselves about candidates. What you'll find there are things the candidate wrote themselves about themselves. And also you'll find information on candidate forums in your area. We're having one tonight in Homewood for the District 9 City Council. So I have to rush over there, and so does some other people here tonight. There's also other information out there that I would probably tell you to go to the state site instead of going to vote411.org, such as to check your voter registration. Better off going to the source, go to the state, finding your polling place, go to the state. But as far as seeing your sample ballot, while you'll see the exact ballot on the state or county site, Vote411 will have information earlier than those other places. Their information won't be as complete. The minor offices may not show up on Vote411, but the information on the up ballot candidates will appear much sooner than you'll find it elsewhere. Thanks, Mark.
So I can't get upset about anyone getting my name wrong. My own mother has called me Alyssa twice now, so I give up. So my name's Elisa Grishman, and I co-run Ballots for Patients with Paul O'Hanlon. For those unfamiliar, the general gist of it is that on election day, we go into hospitals to collect emergency absentee ballots from people who have been admitted in the last 72 hours who can't get to their polling location. Because there's this prevailing notion that disability is a permanent state, but really, you know, you're in a car accident, you break your leg, you're disabled for a day, you can't get out to the polls, or lots of new moms, things like that. And Paul said it well once, that there's sort of a poetic, wonderful thing about having people who are permanently disabled running this project to help people who never would have ever thought of themselves as being disabled, you know, vote for the day. And so it is a lengthy process. We work from 8 a.m. till often, we've I think twice now that I've been involved, had the judge of elections keep the office open extra time, but we have volunteers who go room to room and collect emergency ballot applications. Then there's clean room procedures, you name it. Then we have to have doctors and notaries sit down together and notarize each document as, yes, this person is in the hospital. we take it to the courthouse where each individual application has to be presented to the judge of elections and be approved for a ballot. We get the ballots printed, we bring them back to the hospital.
You're talking about the common pleas court judge, right? Not a district judge election.
Yes, sorry, I misspoke. Yes, sorry. No, thank you for the clarification. I'm just trying to remember where, so yeah, we go round two of volunteers going room to room, filling out the ballot application, or the actual ballots, take them back to the common court judge and submit them all. So it's this lengthy, wonderful process, and I think it's one of the best things I've ever done in my life. You know, we have people, you know, in there with terminal cancer. There was a 90-something-year-old woman who started sobbing because she knew that this was her last election, and she was thrilled that she'd get to vote. I've heard of several people of different ages who, you know, were battling cancer, who had similar stories, and new moms, and you know, it's this powerful, wonderful experience. And we're trying to then, you know, take this further into nursing homes, personal care homes. That is its own set of hurdles, this and that. But I will say that, you know, we are always looking for volunteers. So, you know, I think everyone should have a thing on their table. Come talk to me afterwards. There's a sign-up sheet at the front desk. I've got sign-up sheets. Come talk to me, and I'll let Jean go on.
Thank you. My name is Jean Searle. I'm a South African, and the one thing that we see in Pennsylvania is that there is not a lot of places for people with disabilities to vote. A lot of them have steps. A lot of them are not even accessible. When you do ask them to put a ramp, they refuse to put the ramp because they figure, well, nobody with a disability is going to come in here, so why should we put a ramp? And we said, well, you know, you got people in your neighborhood who lives right across the street from you, and you need to have a ramp so they can come and vote. And then they always say, well, that's not important. What's important is that people who can walk should be able to walk and be able to come in and vote and do whatever they need to do, which I really much disagree with that. So we have fought with them quite a few times, and we're still fighting. But I also think that people with disabilities need to really put all their heart and soul into this election, especially the one for next year. The next year is going to be the hardest election for us big time, because a lot of people that are running do not accept people with disabilities. They have no idea what people with disabilities are and what we do. And when we do tell them who we are and what we want them to do, they'll say, oh yeah, we'll do it. But then when it really comes down to the nitty-gritty, they decide, nah, that's okay. Let's just worry about the rich people, and all the other people with disabilities, put them hide away, because they cause a lot of problems and we're too much of a hassle for them. So that's what I see, and I think that we really need to push the legislators and push everybody that we can to really understand that people with disabilities have a right just like everybody else does. We live in this world, you know, we are here to fight for what's right and fight what we deserve. But I also think that I'm tired of being promised and have the legislature promised me stuff and they don't deliver. So I'm hoping that this year or next year that the legislators really hear us loud and clear. But I also think that because I've heard so many people talk today about how powerful it is for people to vote, that I think that we should definitely go out there and just, sleep at their house or protest or do something, because I am tired of just not sitting back and doing something. I mean, we need to just be out there 24/7, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. I don't care what kind of weather it is, as long as we're out there. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Regis Charlton, and I'm Deputy Director for Disability Options Network's Center for Independent Living, and I'm responsible for the services in Allegheny County. What we do is we help people get registered to vote. We ask everybody that comes in if they are registered. If they say no, we ask if they want to be registered. If they want to be registered and they need assistance, we assist them by helping them fill out the ballot. We ask if they would like us to mail the ballot for them. If they do, we do that. If they would rather take the ballot home, registration home, and fill it out and send it, we do that. We show them where to send it in their county, because it's different in every county, and it's on there. If they need an accessible registration form, we have those as well for people that are visually impaired. We let them know what their rights are as voters. We give them a voters' bill of rights. Them that they're entitled to assistance if they want it or need it. We let them know how to find where their polling place is. We let them know to find out if their place is accessible, and if they think they might need to get an absentee ballot. We do all those things. We answer any questions they have about voting and about the political process.
Thank you. So for this next round of questions, we'll try to do maybe a little bit of a rapid fire just in the interest of time. So I ask the panelists if you can keep your comments to 2 to 3 minutes. I'll kind of go back down the row again, but when we get to you, I think there was an audience member that might have a particular question, so we'll allow her to ask that question for you. So first I'm coming to you, back to you, Ron. You and I, we were together maybe a couple of weeks ago at the Allegheny County Elections Board meeting when they were making the decision about the voting machine that they were selecting, and you gave some really profound remarks about sort of the process and kind of what needs to be done going forward and how this decision is going to impact different voters. So I know we spoke about this a little bit in the previous panel, but can you talk a little bit about how the decision that has been made, not just in Allegheny County, but across the state with new voting systems, how that's going to impact voters with disabilities?
Sure. So all the counties of Pennsylvania are required to have a new voting system by next year. Some counties will be ready this November. Allegheny County is not one of them, and I don't think any of western Pennsylvania counties will be ready this November. So we'll all be ready for the primary in 2020, the presidential primary. The new voting systems must have either a paper ballot or a paper record. A paper ballot, I think you understand. For most voters, that means it'll be a pre-printed ballot. They will fill in ovals next to the names of candidates whom they would like to select. And then the voter will themselves bring the ballot to a scanner and feed it into the scanner right there in the polling place, at least in most counties. In Forest County and Elk County, they may just put it into a ballot box to be scanned at a central location later. But for voters who cannot hand mark a ballot, there must be an accessible device called a ballot marking device. It looks a lot like the machines we use today, the iVotronic touchscreen voting machine. Unlike the machines today, which record your choices directly in computer memory, the new machine will simply print out a paper ballot. It will not tabulate your vote. It will not store your choices. It will just print out a paper ballot, and the voter will then bring that paper ballot to the same scanner that the voters who are hand marking their ballots will bring it to. So that's how it's going to work in counties that have hand marked paper ballots. Some counties will choose to have ballot marking devices for all voters. Philadelphia is choosing to do that. I believe Montgomery County, next to Philadelphia, is also choosing to do that. That is an expensive solution. And one possible design, and in fact the one that Philadelphia chose, is one in which the voter never actually handles the ballot. The machine will, you'll make your choices on the touch screen. The machine will print a ballot, which is, they call it a card. It's only like 4 or 5 inches wide, but 14 inches long. And it has a summary of your choices. Only candidates you selected would appear, and not the candidates you did not select. And that card would appear behind a plexiglass window for you to verify before pressing the vote button, where it would then shoot the card into the ballot box. One problem, which I believe it was you, Elisa, or perhaps it was, no, it was Christine, made me aware of, was that it's hard to scan with using your phone, right? If you have some text-to-voice reading software, such as Voice Dream, I think was the one Christine told me about. Using the camera on your phone to read the ballot to you, it doesn't see through that plexiglass very well. And you would have to ask a poll worker to unlock the machine and remove the card, and it changes the whole procedure. So I think that about covers it.
Thank you. So Ms. Grishman, I am coming to you next. Very impressed by your initiative and your effort, and really the intentionality that you have for serving the population that you serve, make sure they have access to the ballot. I cannot imagine that your process to getting that approved or through all of the red tape was a very easy process, but for anyone who was here today that may be interested in replicating something like you did, walk us through sort of the process that you had to go through in order to kind of get the green light to have this approved.
Well, a lot of this, as Paul spoke about earlier, after the one woman did the curbside vote and the state then went and implemented this emergency absentee ballot, that's what kind of paved the way for us to be able to open this, to do this. It is still, you have to first of all work with the hospitals, so that is a lot of work in and of itself, and because it's a lot of effort, a lot of the time the hospitals aren't so thrilled about having to participate. So there's a lot of cultivating relationships there, and there's the hurdles of, if you have a more widespread county, we have a fairly condensed county, so driving ballots and whatnot back and forth between the courthouse downtown and the respective hospitals isn't such a big deal. But we can only take care of Allegheny County residents in Allegheny County, because there's no way we can get a single driver to go back and forth to Butler multiple times. It's just not feasible. And I think counties that have, hospitals and county seats that are further apart, that might be a timing issue. I will never stop doing ballots for patients, but I think in many ways, a lot of places might be better served by trying to change how we vote in the state, which will be good for everyone if we do things like advanced voting or things like that. So in some ways, I almost feel like for most counties, that's a more feasible idea, but anyone can do this if you're like not sleeping for a week and living on coffee and spreadsheets. So
Awesome, thank you. For our next question, Jean, I'm going to go a little bit off script, and I'm looking at Miss Mary to make sure it's okay that I can, and she's not looking back at me, so I'm going to go ahead and take my privilege as the moderator to do that, and I'm going to, there was an audience member who had a question specifically for Jean, if you don't mind. Oh, yes.
Thanks, Jean. I was hoping that you could speak to, I know we've been talking a lot about people who have physical disabilities and who may not be able to see or may not be able to hear. But I'm thinking about a person who may not be able to read, who may be able to get into the polling place, but can't read the ballot, but still knows who they want to vote for. Can you talk a little bit about how we make sure that those people are able to vote and express their preferences, maybe through assistance in the polling place?
Sure. The one thing that I think maybe a couple of years ago, we started a little program in Harrisburg, and what we do is we would go out to every polling place to see if it was accessible. And when people go to the polling place and it's not, they would call the disability rights. We have a hotline number that people will call. We collect calls what day on election day, and it's open from 8 o'clock in the morning or sometimes 7:30. It all depends on what time the poll places are open, from either 7:30 or until 8 o'clock. So a couple staff people will be in the office answering phones. I remember this one person that went to the poll place with her husband, and he was very much disabled, and he could not, the poll place was not even accessible for him. So she called the poll place to see if they could make it accessible for him to be able to go into the poll place to be able to vote. And the poll worker said that there was no way that they were able to do that. So her idea was maybe take the polling, the ballot, not ballot, but the machine outside to the car and see if he could vote it that way. Well, they were going to do that, but it was so hard for them to do that they had to come up with another way for that to happen. So they had to take the whole machine apart in order for him to be able to vote inside his car, because there was no way for him to be able to get inside the place to vote. And the other thing is that a lot of people with physical and blind people, now they're trying to tell us that they're going to still use the old machine this year, but what they're talking about is use the paper ballot for next year for the 2020 election. The problem that I see with that is that, first of all, it's not accessible for a person who are blind, who are hard of hearing, and don't understand what's going on. And I think with the paper ballot, it's not going to work for anybody with a disability. They're also talking about getting rid of the machines altogether, which I think is a very bad idea. I don't know if anybody here in the room has heard that before, but this is what we're hearing in Pennsylvania. So I'm hoping that answers the question, but if not, I'll answer more if you need it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. Reese, I'm coming to you with this one. So for those individuals who may be, let's say, allies of voters with disabilities who may not know necessarily the best ways to be supportive, what recommendations would you have in terms of advocacy that they can do to be better allies, to make sure that the voting rights for people with disabilities are always at the forefront of everybody's conversations?
Sure, I would encourage advocates to let their people know that have disabilities that it's empowering. It's a form of self-empowerment. It's an opportunity to get your voice raised. I would encourage them to know about the legislation that's going to impact people with disabilities. For example, the Family Care Act there's proposed changes to the MAUD program right now to raise the wages up to, I believe, $75,000. And that's going to help people to be able to accept a promotion, accept more hours. This has impacted a lot of people before. The ABLE account. If you are on assistance with SSI or SSDI, it's gonna, that changes to that proposed right now. And there's active legislation going on that's going to raise that age from 26 to 46. Those are some things that are gonna really impact the disabled community, as well as if they vote, they're going to get integrated in the community. They're going to be engaged. Also, I read recently the impact that we are having, even though it seems like it's not. I think it's starting to turn. More people every year with disabilities are voting. I just read 1 in 6 voters are disabled. So imagine every person that was disabled was one of those 6 voted, the impact we would have, and we would get more attention. I just also read a study done by Rutgers University that they were saying that if the people with disabilities voted at the same rate and the same demographics as people without disabilities in the upcoming elections, there would be 21.3 million voters. And if that happens, we sure are going to get their attention. Thank you.
Reese, I'm going to stick with you because you have the mic right now. We're going to go in reverse order. Just a last question as we wrap up this panel for all the panelists, and I ask that you keep it to 60 seconds or less. I'm looking at everybody. All right. Regis, if there was somebody who was here who would like to get involved with your organization or the work that you all are doing, how would they reach out to you? How would they find you? How would they get involved? What does that process look like?
It'd be really easy to get involved with us. All you have to do is call our toll-free number, 1-866-652-5144. We also have a website, Disability Options Network. If you do a search of that, you'll find us. I'm going to also give my Google phone number. It's 412-353-3826. I answer that all the time. I turn off my phone at 9 o'clock at my wife's request so I can stay married. But those are the best ways you can do that. Thank you.
For us, it's the Disability Rights Pennsylvania. Our number is 1-800-692-7443. You can also reach me at the disabilityrightspa.org. I am there. My name will be Jean Searle as a sole advocate. So thank you.
So everyone should have a card on their table at some point somewhere on their tables with info. You can email us at ballotsforpatients@gmail.com, or you can come afterwards and fill out something on the sign-in sheet.
Or Facebook, Pittsburgh Ballots.
Oh yeah, Facebook, Pittsburgh Ballots for Patients.
And the League of Women Voters of Greater Pittsburgh, you can find online at LWV, League of Women Voters, lwvpgh.org, or our phone number. The phone was locked. There we go. Phone number in our Pittsburgh office is 412-261-4284.
Thank you. And I also want to just flag election protection. We'll be running again this election in November and again in 2020. For those who do not know, election protection is a hotline where you can call if you run into any issues on election day, say a polling place is inaccessible. You're able to call this line and they can work to figure out some solutions for you. That number is 1-866-OUR-VOTE. That's 1-866-687-8683. Give a round of applause for all of our panelists today. We greatly appreciate your time for being here. Thank you so much.
this concludes our program. Folks, there are to-go boxes. Thank you to my colleague Laura Power for coming up with that idea, because we don't want to waste any food. We want you to take it home. Please take to-go boxes, drinks, everything. Just walk out of the museum with it. Just don't take any treasures with you. And thanks again, everybody. Really appreciated the panels and all the discussion and the speakers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.